World of Warcraft to Final Fantasy XIV, a refugee guide, part 1. Welcome back to the channel, everyone. I'm your host Gyro. Particularly warm welcome to you if you're new here, and very most sincere thank you for welcoming me into Final Fantasy XIV community if you're one of those lovely people. So what are we talking about today? Look, today I am going to start delivering on my promise of starting to put together this series. It's intended to be a series of little mini guides or kind of tips for World of Warcraft veterans, for perhaps burnt out players who are migrating from World of Warcraft to Final Fantasy XIV. If you want to know more about me and why I feel like I can talk to you about this, please just check out the video linked above right now and watch the first introductory video to my content and to my first kind of look at Final Fantasy XIV. Do I know Final Fantasy XIV to pretend to you to be an expert on that I know everything? Absolutely not. Not by a long metric mile shot. But I know World of Warcraft players. I know people like me. I know people who feel like me. I know what would scare them off. I know what would please them. That's why this and every subsequent part of this little series, of this little guide, is going to be delivered unapologetically from the perspective of this experienced World of Warcraft player who now discovers Final Fantasy XIV and welcomes your feedback, welcomes your advices. Please subscribe, show your support, like the video. I totally appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. With that being said, thank you for listening. Let's jump into the tips for my fellow World of Warcraft players, literally just taking their first steps into Final Fantasy XIV. So first of all, my friends, character creation. So we are used to fairly basic character creation and customization in World of Warcraft, which obviously has been expanded and improved a little bit in Shadowlands, yes, but you know, compared to Final Fantasy XIV, from what I've seen so far, World of Warcraft's version of character creation is very rudimentary. We're not even gonna go there with overlaying with unnecessary videos, but Final Fantasy XIV I think will offer you quite a lot of customization options, and to my eye, to my newbie eye in Final Fantasy XIV, you can spend probably an hour, if not longer, just customizing your character. So go all out, my friend, if that is something that rocks your boat, if that's something that tickles your fancy. Now your first question would be, what class should I play? Yes, and I know there is 500 million videos on YouTube already answering that question, so I'm just gonna very quickly say my piece and not be an echo chamber to the other people talking about this. Your class in Final Fantasy XIV is determined by your main weapon. Your class / job can be, in my understanding, can be changed, swapped and so on, and leveled separately at any time. So for example, right now at the moment of recording of this video, I'm a conjurer, which basically means I'm a healer, and if I open my jobs, I have no levels on any other job. I just kind of wanted to explore the game and not spend too much time switching between the jobs just yet. So I was simply going healer. I am 0 on everything else. But you could diversify, and that's fantastic. I think it gives you certain flexibility there. You can really truly make this your main, so to speak, as we would call it in World of Warcraft. You can just dedicate your time to one particular character, and the more I think about it, the more positives I see about this. Now, UI and accessibility. I said that in the first quick overview of my impressions of Final Fantasy XIV. In the previous video, I found UI and general accessibility very subpar to World of Warcraft. I think that one thing that World of Warcraft has nailed over the years, like probably one main thing that they've nailed, is accessibility of the UI, how streamlined everything is. Of course, I spent years there. Of course, I just know my way around. Probably that plays a major part. And when compiling these notes, I took into consideration this point. But I do still objectively, rather than subjectively, I objectively think that World of Warcraft has streamlined access to all the necessary functions better than Final Fantasy XIV has done so far. But you can get used to it. Now, all the new players to Final Fantasy XIV, including myself at this stage of the game, are marked with a green little cute sprout. Green little sprouts, all of us are right now in Final Fantasy XIV. This tells you which players are you know, new to the game, and which ones are relative veterans who might show you around. You might be able to, say in a dungeon situation that we'll talk about further down the line, that you might know who to look to for certain guidance, for certain direction, or even just to follow them around if you want to. Now, maps, navigation, and other elements of the UI that are related to finding your way around the place, so to speak. What can I say? Well, if you spend a little bit of time just looking at the UI, you will see that it resembles WoW in many ways. It does. There is a mini-map in the top right corner, and your M key opens the actual map. Map is resizable, movable, without any add-ons, without anything. It can be made transparent while you're moving around if it stays open, or that transparency feature can be switched off by clicking on a little icon there on the left-hand side of the mini-map, actually, of the map open. All this is nice. You can also, if you feel like there are too many markers on the map, which I felt like they were too overwhelming, there was too much stuff there. Well, again, there are tiny little buttons on the left-hand side of that open map window that you can experiment with a tiny bit, and you can turn them off if that bothers you. So I used it a couple of times when I tried to find my way around, and I think that there are some ways to reduce the visual clutter, so you might want to pay attention to that. Generally, traveling, look, you will see and will be introduced in the game pretty much straight away to these huge blue crystals. Sometimes huge blue crystals in the middle of town, and sometimes small blue crystals all over the place. Small blue crystals, well, they are waypoints, really. They are teleports. They teleport you from one place to another. You need to pay attention to directions. Often a quest, and we are used to, we have almost that our trigger finger is to close that accept the next quest and just look for the marker on the map, yes? There are no markers on the map, as in no arrow that points you in the direction. There is none of that. There is none of that. If you open a map, obviously, there will be a marker of the quest on the map, but you first need to possibly scroll around, zoom in, zoom out, and it might even be in a different zone, so you need to zoom out quite a lot to even see where am I compared to where I need to be. From what I've discovered so far in this early game, there are two types of quests. I'm sure there are more, okay? I'm sure there are more, but in essence, there are two types of quests. There are normal quests that are subdivided into categories, and then there is something that would look like world quests to you as a World of Warcraft player. Like, let's talk about normal ones. So normal ones, first of all, there are the main story quests, or MSQs. They're being abbreviated in chat, somewhere else you will see, don't let it confuse you. Main story quests. They are indicated by having kind of grayish blue background and the golden kind of dragon edges around the quest. My understanding is that we as new green sprouts need to first and foremost stick to those. We need to follow the main storyline. That's the best way to level. That's the best way to keep up with everything else that you need to unlock in the game. Things like the equivalent of Dungeon Finder. Because if you don't follow that quest line, turns out it doesn't matter how high you level, you will not unlock certain features if you don't follow the quest line. So that's why it's so important. Now, second type of those normal quests, imagine me doing here kind of a little quotation marks with my fingers, are very, very rich blue background quests with a little plus icon. Those are typically indicating that they're your class quests, and if it's blue with a lovely little plus, it means that doing that will unlock something. And then the third type of normal quests, I would say, are the side quests. They look just like a little golden drop with a little exclamation mark. They're fine. I've done a lot of them, especially in the first zone while I was just finding my way around without paying particular attention to anything else. They're okay, they're fine, but it looks like they're very, very optional. And it looks to me also like if you're not focusing on them or doing every single of those quests, you are not going to lose much. So as long as you stick to the blue ones and to the main story questline ones. Now, the second type of quests that I kind of mentioned a few minutes ago are those world quests, effectively. Here they're called fates. They are marked by a little purplishly pink, I don't know, depending on how colorblind you are, the markers on the map. And they have they're very, very visible. They are on timer. They are on much shorter timer than world quests are in World of Warcraft, which is good. It creates kind of a feeling of the world being alive, of things just happening. From what I've seen, they just give you a bit of experience, but they didn't give me any particular rewards to look forward to. So I wonder if fates actually give you gear, if they give you weapons, if they give you the other stuff that a lot of us World of Warcraft casuals actually appreciate quite a lot. So it might not be something that you as Final Fantasy XIV veterans would even expect from a fate, but we do. So for us, it's just curious to see, is it something for us to look forward to and prioritize therefore? Now, talking about gear, because we love gear, right? Well, first of all, you get gear from quests naturally, yeah, unsurprisingly. Gear is rather plentiful, there's nothing too crazy to say about it, kind of in this quick format of little tips. Just do your quests, just pick the gear. Just be aware that almost each quest that grants gear to you, it kind of gives you two types of gear. One of them would be for your combat/tanking specialization, while another one would be for your healing and ranged caster, spellcaster specialization. Do you know what I mean? It's critical, because at first you might not pay attention. You think that it's just a difference like in World of Warcraft between two pieces of gear being given to you as options of a reward, and one of them used to give spirit and another one used to give intellect. And you're like, what's my most important stat? Am I a healer or am I a damage caster? Well, in this case, it's not just that, it goes beyond that. It goes towards your basically specialization, your job. So that's why it's important to pay attention to what piece of gear do you pick up, okay? There is a recommended gear button. There is a lovely little user recommended gear button, which is very, very helpful. Thank you for pointing it out to me. I spent like 5 minutes trying to find it after somebody told me, but then I found it and I was like, wow, that's the best thing ever. So just don't be afraid to use the user recommended gear button. It opens a nice lovely window where it tells you first exactly what it proposes that you swap, because the system thinks that there is better suited gear in your bags to equip. It's wonderful. I love it. I love it. Now, speaking about combat very quickly, combat is similar to WoW. We will be talking more about combat in my coverage of the dungeons, because I think we will fit that into the next video. Combat can be seen as slow, and I think that's attributed to the fact that global cooldown, in my understanding, the default global cooldown on usage of abilities is 2.5 seconds, at the very least in ARR, Air Realm Reborn expansion, which is the first expansion, the one that noobs basically get exposed to in Final Fantasy XIV. Further, that cooldown gets further reduced by skill speed and other kind of criteria. I understand that too, but basically at first, to us noobs, it does feel very, very slow. Feels slow, and there are not that many instants. There are some, but not many, which makes it a little sluggish, okay? So, particularly what I'd like to say is, as I've experienced a healer perspective here, and especially as I start doing a little bit of, let's say, dungeoning, right? So you need to be very careful as a healer, because you might think from your World of Warcraft experience, you might think that you have time to contribute to the DPS and throw in some damage spells there, right? In between of healing everyone. You might not. You might not. The person's health your friend's health might drop, and you will not have time to heal them because you will be locked in the global cooldown. So please prioritize heals. You need to do that. Speaking of other helpful stuff for healers specifically, macros, my friends. We use macros in World of Warcraft. You need to open your mind to using macros in Final Fantasy XIV. Once again, I'm not an expert, will not pretend to be such. Thank you very much for someone who pointed out macros to me as a system, because it's super helpful, and for a perspective of a healer, it's almost not negotiable. You need it, absolutely. Please take a look at the description of this video. I will include a link that someone shared with me, so once again, thank you, my friend, very much, because that is very helpful, very welcoming. But I am basically recommending that you look into macros. They're very easy, very, very easy, okay? And as a healer, at the very least, what you need to do is you need to implement the mouse over macros so that you can heal very quickly with default targeting and or mouse over targeting, stuff like that. In my opinion, from a 5-minute introduction to macros and from what I've set up for myself here, okay? I think that this system is almost more straightforward and easier than World of Warcraft. Now I have to point out one particular feature to you, which is called Hall of Novice. Basically, throughout your questing, at some point you will meet an NPC who will tell you, hey, there is a Hall of Novice, you unlocked a Hall of Novice. You need to visit Hall of Novice to make sure that you train on your skills. It's optional. But first of all, it's very nicely incentivized because they give you very nice piece of gear, very nice few pieces of gear. As you go through a few lessons there, through a few trials, they are sort of hard, they are sort of getting a bit harder and kind of tell you exactly you need to dodge the damage, you need to continue healing your target, target is taking real damage, stuff like that. It's awesome. And I love being incentivized. I make no excuses, I love being incentivized, and that incentivization is not just in me proving my worth to the system, but it's also in me getting some gear. And the final trial, the final kind of learning, the final training exercise gives you a ring which increases your experience gain by 30% up until the point when you are level 30, which I think is a massive contribution first to your leveling speed, and we love increases to our leveling speed in World of Warcraft, don't we? We are a bit less patient than our fine folk here in Final Fantasy XIV. Let's try and fit in, my friends. So it's a great piece of gear, good reason, if no other reason for you to do Hall of Novice, do this for that. Final point that I'd like to do here before I wrap up this video and it becomes too long are dungeons. I've done 2 dungeons up to the point of me recording this video, about to do another one. Loved the experience. Dungeons are very much scratching every itch that a normal World of Warcraft player, casual World of Warcraft player would have. They are unlocked a little later in the storyline, so if you come across dungeon entrances somewhere in Gridania, let's say, and you're like, why can't I enter? It's because, my friend, you need to progress the storyline and you need to actually unlock the feature called Duty Finder. It's what I was referring to a little earlier in this video as the equivalent of Dungeon Finder. I liked the dungeons, I really did, okay? And in the next video I'm going to be talking to you specifically about dungeoning experience, okay? It's wonderful, and as a preview I had fun. I played a healer and I had both like very chilled experience and a slightly more intense experience as shown here in the background. Once again, thank you for being so warm and welcoming me into the community of Final Fantasy XIV. I feel honored, privileged and humbled by your attention and by you becoming my subscribers, by joining this little growing, unpretentious, casual, friendly club. Thank you very much. I'll be speaking with you again very soon. See you later. Bye bye.
Boom the bass like this.